I wanted to ask you personally, how did your journey with the Biennale start? What were you doing before that and what made you join that?
Well, I was working in Europe, where I grew up in the UK, and I was working in art and fashion and music and creative fields for about a decade. Not a very orthodox career. I was working mainly in the independent fields, but I used to visit art galleries and museums, biennales, places like Documenta in Castle, which happens every 5 years, to look at art. That's really how my journey really began, I suppose.
How did this group of people who put the Biennale together, how did you all come together? Were you all friends, or who started it, and how did the group come together?
Well, in 2010, the then Minister of Education and Culture in Kerala, M.A. Baby, approached two artists from the state, and the discussion was around creating an art festival in Kerala. And the proposal that was given was that perhaps India should host its first Biennale, and that it should be held in Cochin. And soon after that, we began preparing proposals. We did know each other. We'd known about each other's interest in biennales and festivals. Riaz Como had participated in the Venice Biennale in 2007. So we knew each other, and then it was a confluence of people and ideas. People sort of gathered round and really started to support, and it became a kind of movement, as it were. People began to be interested in the idea, and they offered their help, and it was really a confluence.
It opened last December. How long were you guys working before it opened?
We were working for about 2.5 years before that. I'd like to clarify as well. We are talking about. It's not essentially a business. It's a non-profit endeavor. So.
Sure.
All the art that you see, nothing was for sale, and essentially as an organization we raise funds from public-private sources, government, patrons, corporates, etc., and we commission the curators, in this case, select the artists and commission these artworks that you see, and then it's really open for the public to come and wander around. So there isn't really a profit incentive in that sense, although, as you mentioned earlier, there is a benefit to society.
And how many artists did you have from how many countries?
We had in the first edition 89 artists from 23 countries.
Yeah. And how did you go about choosing these artists?
Well, generally in fields of art, museums, the curator chooses, so an artistic director. And in our case, the two artist founders co-curated the first edition. So they had a conceptual theme, which was cosmopolitanism, the history of Cochin, which I'm not sure if everybody knows how far back it dates, and the idea of globalization. This work that you see here by Bhavan Sundaram, these are pottery shards from Muziris. Muziris is about 40 kilometers from here. It's an ancient port. In 1321, there was a flood, and the port then moved to Cochin. But this port dates back 2,500 years. The Phoenicians, the Greeks, the Chinese, Arabs. First place Islam came to, first place Christianity came to in India was through Muziris. And it was covered, and people didn't know the existence of it perhaps, and they didn't know the location certainly. And they've started excavating Muziris. They've started to uncover things from that period of history which sheds light on our universalism, our globalized world, way before the term sort of emerged in the mid-20th century. Cochin then replaced the port when the Dutch arrived, the British, and the colonial history is well known. But it was certainly a place which was very tolerant. It accepted people and cultures from around the world. And because of the spice trade that you see in Fort Cochin, you see these incredible spaces. The Venezia's held in these large sort of warehouses along the water. So it was a perfect place in a sense to sort of hold a festival which invited the world back again, I suppose.
We see people, we see the installations, etc. But the 2.5-year journey that happened, did you ever feel at some point that this is never going to happen, or was it always positive? How did you get over some of the issues you may have had, if you had any?
I guess it was a collective strength. I think all of us, it was a struggle. It wasn't easy. I think to do a project of this scale in India, it had been attempted before in Delhi in the mid-2000s, and there was a triennale in India as far back as 1968. In fact, it was the first triennale in the world. So there was murmurings, there was a sort of appetite, I suppose, a desire to put something like this on. And I think that that movement, I suppose, the collective effort helped. And of course it was difficult, but as I said, we are working with some incredible people, and they all contributed, to making it a success, not least the artists. When we didn't have money, when there were difficulties, it was the artists that really sort of believed in what we were trying to do.
When the Biennale actually opened, tell us a little bit about what kind of a reception did it get? What kinds of people come? How many people came? Tell me a little bit about what happened when you opened.
Well, I mean, there was a lot of ambiguity, and I'm not sure if everybody, and I've been asked today, what is a biennale? And
right.
The word biennale essentially means every 2 years in Italian, biennial in British English and in French, but it essentially means every 2 years. When it's associated with this kind of large-scale citywide art exhibition, the word takes on certain connotations. You have lots of biennales around the world, the most prestigious and the oldest being Venice, but you have biennales in Istanbul, Havana, Gwangju, various places around the world. And we started working in advance of the biennial. We had cultural programs, theatre sketches. We created a program called My Biennale, where local residents could sort of feel part of the project. And in the first week, to our surprise, we had 75,000 people attend, and by the end of the Biennale, we'd had nearly 400,000 people. We also had people from around the world. We had museum directors, we had collectors, we had curators, academics, we had policymakers, we had government. It was a really interesting, diverse group of people that came, and it was interesting to see everybody experiencing art together. There wasn't a sort of exclusion, there wasn't a separation, there wasn't a VIP room. There wasn't a first-class ticket. It was, everybody paid the same price, whether you were a foreigner or you were Indian. It was 50 rupees. It was 10 rupees for children. Everybody experienced art together. So I think that was quite unique.
So you said earlier that, Venice Biennale is the most prestigious. What makes a Biennale prestigious?
Every 2 years, you have a new artistic direction. You have new artists. You have a new impetus. These institutions don't get ossified. And Venice is beautiful. And I think they've done quite a lot over the years to make sure that their Biennale stays relevant and keeps up with the times. And of course, they have architecture that alternates between the art, dance, film, theatre. So
maybe tell us a little bit about what are the future plans for the Biennale, who might be curating it. Tell me something about the future. Well, we are going to appoint a new curator, and that'll be announced soon. We'll have cultural programs, talks, academic programs. We concentrated quite a lot on our education program for the first Biennale. We had 30,000 school children that attended. We had 1,600 students from local schools. We had 12 higher education institutions from around the country. So we'd like to extend the education, we'd like to extend the programs, but essentially it's about the art. And so the curator that's going to be coming in will have a free rein to come up with their theme and to select the artists that they feel ought to be shown. So, thank you.